The studio lights blazed down on the set of Jimmy Kimmel Live, where the audience buzzed with anticipation. Jimmy Kimmel, with his signature grin, leaned back in his chair, ready to welcome his next guest. The crowd's energy was electric, fueled by the promise of a spicy interview. Karoline Leavitt, the young and fiery White House press secretary, stepped onto the stage, her heels clicking confidently against the polished floor. She wore a sharp blazer, her expression a mix of determination and charm, as she waved to the cheering audience. Jimmy stood to greet her, his handshake firm but his eyes twinkling with mischief. The segment began with light banter. Jimmy cracked a joke about Washington's coffee addiction, and Karoline shot back with a quip about Hollywood's obsession with avocado toast. The audience laughed, but there was an undercurrent of tension. Everyone knew Karoline's role in the administration was polarizing, and Jimmy wasn't one to shy away from tough questions. He started with softballs, asking about her journey from New Hampshire to the White House briefing room. Karoline spoke passionately about her roots, her voice steady as she described her rise through the political ranks. She leaned into her talking points, emphasizing the administration's agenda with a polished ease that came from countless press briefings. But Jimmy, ever the provocateur, shifted gears. He brought up recent headlines about controversial executive orders, his tone playful but pointed. Karoline's smile tightened, and she countered with a rehearsed defense of the administration's policies. The audience sensed the shift, their murmurs growing quieter as Jimmy pressed harder. He referenced a viral clip from a recent press conference where Karoline had struggled to explain a policy decision, and the crowd chuckled. Karoline's eyes narrowed, but she kept her composure, deflecting with a comment about the media's bias. Jimmy didn't let up, pulling out a comically oversized executive order stamped with a cartoonish seal and asked if she'd sign it for him. The audience roared, but Karoline's laugh was strained. She accused Jimmy of trivializing serious issues, her voice rising slightly. He responded with a quip about the administration's love for spectacle, and the crowd erupted again. The exchange was heating up, and the producers in the control room exchanged glances. This was no ordinary interview. Karoline leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly, and challenged Jimmy to ask a real question. He obliged, diving into a hot-button issue about tariffs that had tanked the stock market. Karoline's response was sharp, accusing the media of fearmongering. Jimmy countered with data, citing economists who'd criticized the policy. The back and forth grew intense, with Karoline's voice cutting through the studio's hum. She accused Jimmy of pushing a narrative, while he insisted he was just asking questions the public deserved answers to. The audience was riveted, some cheering, others booing softly. Karoline's face flushed as she defended her boss, her words coming faster, laced with frustration. Jimmy, sensing the moment, leaned in with a grin, asking if she ever got tired of spinning stories. The crowd gasped, and Karoline's jaw tightened. She fired back, calling Jimmy a Hollywood elitist who didn't understand real America. The studio erupted in a mix of cheers and jeers, and the tension was palpable. The segment was teetering on the edge, and no one knew what would happen next. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every flicker of emotion on Karoline's face. She was a seasoned communicator, but Jimmy's relentless jabs were testing her limits. The audience could feel the clash building to a crescendo, and the energy in the room was unlike anything the show had seen before. This wasn't just a late-night interview, it was a verbal sparring match, and neither side was backing down. The clash escalated as Jimmy Kimmel leaned into his role as the provocateur, his questions growing sharper with each exchange. He pulled up a clip from a recent White House briefing where Karoline had dodged a question about a controversial dinner hosted by the administration. The screen behind them played the footage, showing Karoline deflecting with a comment about the event being private. Jimmy paused the clip, turning to her with a raised eyebrow. "Private? For $37 million a seat, I'd expect a public live stream," he quipped, drawing a huge laugh from the audience. Karoline's smile was gone now, replaced by a steely glare. She accused Jimmy of cherry-picking moments to paint a false narrative, her voice sharp but controlled. She leaned forward, pointing out that the media never covered the administration's successes, like job growth or deregulation. Jimmy didn't miss a beat, countering with a joke about the administration's success in selling branded merchandise. The audience roared, But Karoline wasn't laughing. She fired back, accusing Jimmy of mocking hard-working Americans who supported the administration. The crowd's reaction was split. Some cheered her defiance, while others booed her intensity. Jimmy, unfazed, pivoted to a question about the administration's transparency, referencing reports of closed-door meetings with donors. Karoline's response was fiery, insisting that the administration was the most transparent in history. The audience groaned, and Jimmy pounced, holding up a photo of a heavily redacted document for comic effect. "This is transparency?" he asked, waving the prop. Karoline's face reddened, and she accused Jimmy of staging a gotcha moment. The exchange grew heated, with both talking over each other, their voices rising. Karoline called out Jimmy's bias, claiming he was part of a media machine out to undermine the administration. Jimmy shot back, saying the administration's actions spoke louder than any media spin. The audience was on edge, feeding off the raw energy of the confrontation. Karoline, sensing she was losing ground, doubled down, launching into a passionate defense of the administration's vision for America. She spoke of economic revival, border security, and a return to traditional values, her words resonating with a portion of the crowd. But Jimmy wasn't letting her off the hook. He asked pointedly about allegations of profiteering, referencing the crypto dinner that had sparked headlines. Karoline snapped, calling the accusations absurd and accusing Jimmy of spreading lies. The crowd gasped as she raised her voice, her composure slipping. Jimmy, with a sly grin, suggested she was getting defensive because the truth hurt. Karoline stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor, and declared she wouldn't sit through a character assassination. The audience erupted, some chanting Jimmy's name, others shouting support for Karoline. The producers signaled for a commercial break, but Karoline wasn't done. She pointed at Jimmy, accusing him of disrespecting her and the administration. He responded with a calm but cutting remark about respecting the truth. The tension was unbearable, and the stage manager rushed to intervene, ushering Karoline toward the wings as the show cut to black. The audience was left buzzing, unsure if what they'd witnessed was real or staged. Social media exploded with clips of the exchange, some praising Karoline's boldness, others hailing Jimmy's takedown. The moment was already going viral.